Hello and welcome to the second part of 5.1 Production Methods. This is going from topic number 5, Operations Management, and if you have a look in your textbooks, we're doing 611 to 731. We'll get straight into it. On here I've got the summary sheet for you to have a look at. I've broken it down for cell production and team working, and then the implications for changes in the production systems. For this section here, the main idea is we can have a look at cell production, teamwork, and productivity implications. If I could say anything at the start, just know that this part is more than just cell production. We're having a look at the whole team working aspect and also what's the impact on the business as you change different production methods. This is going to be 100% declarative. We've got cell production, teamwork, and productivity implications. Seems like I've said that about 3 times now, but there's no procedural stuff to get into. So we'll make a start. I've got the same 3 videos from the last one. This one here, really good. I just want to stress you to go back and have a look at the way they do cheese and the different production methods, in particular the quality aspects. Because today it's how do you change sort of the HR and the finance parts as you change different production systems. And this is where they train people and bring them in, and what's the impact as a result. Making potato chips, try the bubblegum one as well. And definitely go through the Lego Mega Factory stuff. It's really quite good. What do you have to do today to succeed? For 6 marks, can you analyse the impacts on marketing, HR and finance if you jump from job to batch and mass? So if you have a look back in 5.1A, you'll see a bit more on this one, and you'll see a bit today as well. And then what's the most appropriate production method if you're given a situation? And then lastly, why do businesses need to have more than just one? So we'll get into it now and have a look. Big things for you today for the definitions is this concept of standardization. That when you move up and you want to start getting more and more production methods going, you want to basically increase your output. The big businesses in the past, your Apples, your Microsofts and stuff, they found out this is exactly what the customer wants, so they tend to standardize their production. By standardizing, you get to make the same thing over and over and over again. The big point of this is so your raw materials and your labor and your production, they're all simplified. Everything's made as simple as possible, so nothing gets too complicated for you to get into. If you make it too complex, the product at the end makes it tough for that whole mass production and flow online to get ready going. The big part for it is, once you've worked it out and you've standardized it and you've got it going, what you want to do is you want to get rid of the muda. A muda is the Japanese term for anything that basically takes away from your 100% perfection. So you're starting up high, and what takes me down to 99, what takes me down to 98, how do I keep it at 100? Rather than going at 0 and trying to work your way up. You try to work out what's the best way of doing it, your best practice, and then get rid of the muda to keep it at 100% and keep your productive capacity at 100%. This is the idea about lean production. So we're going to start trimming off all the fat. You want to get shredded in a sense, like get down to your 4% body fat. If you can get rid of that 4%, then you get your 100%, and you've got ripped abs and whatever's good for you pretty much. The idea is you get it out of your raw materials, so make your raw materials as lean as you absolutely need, like your just-in-time stuff, and also make your production process, get rid of all the unnecessary movements and stages and everything, so there's as least as possible time delays. One of the ways that people have thought about doing this to make it all nice and good is doing cell production. And the big idea is that you can group them all together. And I've got another slide a bit further down to make it a bit more detailed. But the ultimate aim is they thought if we do it this way, it will reduce muda as much as possible rather than just doing it as line and flow or just doing it as mass or job and batch. They thought cell production was the best way to bring about lean production and reduce muda as much as humanly possible. I'll go on the first bit of examples with explaining. What's the main purpose of production for it here? The main purpose in general is to get your economies of scale as best as possible, reduce the average cost of making it down to as nothing as possible. The dream would be is that you have almost nothing, and then what you've got is your margin, so all of that is just profit directly for you as the business owner. And the idea is, how do you get there? If you get this thing right, you decrease the break-even points, the amount of money you have to spend with your total costs and variable costs. So your break-even point gets down, dropping down, and the lower it is, the more you start making profit afterwards. All these things result in your economies of scale getting stronger and stronger. So how do they work this one out? How did like Henry Ford do this? How did Bill Gates? How do these sort of guys work it all out? The key thing was standardizing, making everything the same and breaking it down to the same concepts. An homogeneous group, so you still get exactly the same kick-ass product at the end. I still get my iPhone exactly at the same time, but how do I get those parts in the middle so there's the least amount of time wasting, least amount of resource wasting, least amount of muda, so the iPhone phone at the end is the best product every single time. One way they did this was through the raw materials and the labor. Basically to simplify the parts, don't make anything overly complicated. Make it as easy to assemble and make the worker as skilled as possible to do that one particular job and to move them on as quickly as they go. The idea of making them all the same means you can quickly interchange stuff. So if you have a specialized part and you go, oh, I need to get something else, you need a whole new machine to make that specialized part. If you make everything exactly the same, you can get your just-in-time set up and then get that whole flow, that whole line thing going really quickly so your output can get met. What does it do? Reduces cost. It goes back to decreased average cost, better economies of scale, better break-even point. One of those ideas was really changing up the production process. So moving from job into batches, so rather than doing ... moving along, doing them in groups of fours, then groups of fours, then groups of fours. And moving from flow into mass. The idea is increasing the output. So if you can decrease the cost and increase the output, you're bringing about those economies of scale. And this is the whole idea of production and heading towards this lean production model. So what's the main constraints to doing this? The main constraint is this thing called muda. And muda is a general term for anything you can think of that will cause the labor or the raw materials to decrease in, basically increase in cost, and anything that will cause the output to decrease. So if you get increased cost, decreased output, that's what's removing or reducing you from that 100% capacity coming down. If you can decrease costs and increase output, then you're heading towards that 100% perfection. So basically, anything that's muda, you want to get out of the way because that's stopping you from standardizing and making a lot of profit. Let's look at cell production. I'm going to give you this overtone now, so when I get into a bit later on, it will make more sense. In the most simple sense, cell production is you get your multi-skilled workers together. So rather than having your skilled, unskilled, your managers and workers, you put them all together in one big group. So you're getting them to work together as a team, funnily enough, team working. Their big process is to do internal quality control, kind of like the Toyota sort of Kaizen approach. So they can make all the steps that they're working on as a big team, as a group, reducing all of those little parts. So if you have the big picture, the little parts have the perfection, and if you add up all the perfections together, you get total perfection in a sense. They keep all the raw materials close to them together, and they look at the raw materials together as a group to work out how does the raw materials get better. So you've got raw materials and your labor. If you make them both perfect come together, you're heading towards perfection. Once you've done that, you've done like stage 1 of the production. Then you move on to stage 2, and it's pretty much the same thing, but they're doing a different part. The key part is this. The first stage has to sell onto the second. And it's not like buying and selling like in a store. It's that this product is so good, ready to go. We know it's good. We've done the quality control and we've done our team working and stuff. They can go into the second group, and the second group now accepts it and says, yes, what you've done is good. So that will help progressively, like that sort of incremental growth thing going up. That stage 1 was good, and now stage 2 will be ready to reach that perfected product. And then stage 2 goes into stage 3 and so on until the product is finally completed. What's good about doing this? Well, you get job rotation, so some workers will be happy not doing the same boredom thing again. You also get to appoint your own supervisor, so the person who's the most skilled, you get that sort of meritocracy thing happening. You can also have democracy, as with the leadership styles, so it doesn't feel like you're being talked down to all the time, particularly with skilled workers. The other part is that being your own supervisor, you get a chance at leadership. So whoever wanted to self-actualize, whoever wanted to always have a go, can say we want to change from X theory into Y theory and move around. Also, the quality control is really good. People take ownership of it. So you're making your TQM model. The workers that are being involved in the production process, by taking ownership, should in theory increase the total quality within your business. Finally, you get job enrichment. This is like this Hertzberg idea, that rather than me just doing the same thing each time, my role is now being expanded. I can do more things. I can go into leadership, I can go into a different task, I can be rotated out into a different area. So it's meant to make the worker happier through a Hertzberg sort of idea, these non-financial motivations in practice. What's the bad bit about doing all this? Well, the job rotation may annoy some people, particularly if you're a skilled trained worker. Going into different areas might just frustrate you. If you've been trained and got your degrees and everything else, you go, why am I doing these other parts? I'd rather just do this area because that's what I was trained for in my induction or my on-the-job training, and now to change into sell can be a bit frustrating. If you're in a sell thing already, it's a bit minimized. But coming into the business, because other businesses aren't doing it, it can get frustrating, and that can lead to see your motivation theory and practice going down. Setup costs and run costs can be quite expensive. Even though in the sell you can have days off and days in, you can bring workers in and out. If the stage one group doesn't do it like the right quality thing, costs of moving it on. So once you set it up and it's all working, yeah, it's really good. But the running and setup costs can just be a pain, and it can be quite expensive. So your skimming's going to have to really go in place to recover all those R&D and those total fixed costs. Bit of a hassle, really. The selling aspect of moving it on, doing it is just going to frustrate people. Who likes selling, in a sense, to make my product good for quality? It might just go back to, well, then it's done to our standards, but then meeting your standards is frustrating. So that can head onto motivation and communication problems. And lastly, this has got to really be done for the appropriate products. If it's not done for the right stuff, it can just go all over the place. So sometimes you can implement this, spend the money doing it, thinking it's going to be great, and then it's just a big frustration. You rip it all out, and let's just go back to mass and do it with machines. We don't need people getting involved and so forth. It's a bit of a hassle in a sense. It can lead to communication and motivation problems. Alright, so how does the cell production and the muda stuff come into play, really? So because our main constraint is muda, we want to get rid of all the stuff that takes us away from 100%. If we buy the raw materials, buy them in bulk with our economies of scale, and we reduce the size of the product from being bigger and down to smaller and smaller. Think about your Apple stuff, how it's getting smaller progressively every year. Decrease space in the boxes. If you're moving 1 million out every year, every time you decrease the size, you're saving space, saving shipping costs. So this is one way of getting, from 100% to go back up to that 100%. If you've had to buy in bulk or not buy in bulk, costs brings it back up to 100% if you fix that. You decrease the size, goes back up to 100% again. Ideally do it in cell production, so change from your job batch, match or flow into a cell production, group the machines together, put your workers together, reduce the movements like a Kaizen approach. So all those muda parts where people are spending time going back and forth, bring it all together into one nice group, and then you've saved on floor space. Decreasing floor space ideally increases capacity utilization. And also big on training. If you train your workers up to that right standard, you get in that sort of room's expectancy theory. I expect to do better because I've been trained to do better and I can achieve it. If you don't train me, it's a hassle. Real focus on TQM. So if your workers are all focusing on TQM, what the customer wants, you can get rid of those errors that are causing bottlenecks and bring it back up to 100%. And also multi-skilling your workers. So if a worker's away, somebody else can do their job. Rather than one worker, if that worker's not there, all production has to stop. So for managers, so these are parts of the workers, what can the managers do? In a sense, the managers, they can link rewards to reducing muda. It sounds pretty stupid and obvious, but if you can find a part that actually makes it better, reward them. Do Taylorism, pay them some stuff, put their name on a board, give them a day off, give them employee share ownership scheme, whichever seems to work. But also link rewards to some monitoring costs. So if they're going to be a cost center and the person's whole idea is all it does is just lose money for the business, if they can progressively decrease the costs and potentially increase the outputs, that's a big part. So yes, definitely reduce muda, maybe a non-financial thing to bring it back up again. But if you can directly find areas where the dollars are being spent and reduce that, then that will bring it back up to 100% as well. Alright, so what's the actual impact if you change the production methods in general? And I talked about this in 5.1a. For here, product that changes, you're going to have a real change in the good and service being provided at the end. When things are fully customized to what the customer wants, when the customer changes, things change as well in your production process. So you have to have a new HR focus on what you're doing, because the customer is now driving what you want out of your whole production process. You've got to really link performance to cost. Decreasing cost allows you to make more profit, but also allows you to reduce muda. But more importantly, linking reward to controlling all of these areas, so the person takes ownership of what they're doing. HR shouldn't be about just bonking people over the head if they've done the wrong job. It should be about linking them to directly doing a better job by reducing costs, but also increasing increasing the ownership of what they're doing, i.e. through cell production potentially. You've got to really emphasis on a new marketing part. Your new strategy is going to be on price and also on bulk. This is really cheap because there are economies of scale, and if you want to get these things in bulk, it changes around. Think about Costco, for instance. If we've changed our production methods from being this really unique thing at the end, but now we can make millions of them, you have a whole new marketing plan for you to go into. And lastly, for finance might have a new focus as well. Really, it's about keeping budgets. Because we've worked out and we standardized everything, we know roughly how everything must cost. So if the budgets start to fluctuate up and down, it's really about why did it go up and down? What happened? And if you can start to review that, you reduce that sort of fluctuation down to just being small fluctuations, and ideally with no muda, there's no fluctuations whatsoever. If you want to go into fuller absorption cost pricing as well, to really say this cell group takes up this floor space, that's how much they should be attributed to the total fixed costs. And this group may be smaller, so they can decrease them around. Changing between full and absorption costs can help increase the morale, particularly for the managers, going that we now know exactly how much this costs to make and that floor space and how much this costs in this floor space, so they don't feel like they're being punished, going that we have the total fixed cost being spread between all of us, but I've got no control over it. Breaking up the costing methods for your pricing methods can help make the managers and the workers a bit more happy because they're taking control of what's going on, and they're getting also given that slack because their area might be smaller or bigger. So what's the strategic focus? Notice how this changes for the business. Basically, you want to maximize your market share, which is obvious. I want to get more money out of it. You want to maximize brand loyalty because we're now making exactly what the customer wants, and we've standardized it down to make it exactly how to make them happy, to get that, that utility coming out of the product. And more importantly, about supply chain management. So now we've worked out it takes exactly this long to do this and this and this. We've decreased the amplitude and the mood has gone down to nothing. We've given the customer exactly what they want. We're ideally, because the customer's now happy, our market share from our niche goes into a nice giant slice of the pie, and we've worked out the whole supply chain process. So as long as we make a kick-ass product-oriented product, we should start to crush the market and get better market share. Alright, I've got a question for you. I've pulled this from one of the past exams, and this is about PMG. So feel free to pause it now and have a read over the case study. Cool. The big question for you is this analyzing. So what happens when they change it? What will happen to marketing, HR, and finance when they change from batch to flow? So how's the focus going to jump? When you're doing it in batches with a stop, batches and a stop, batches and a stop, to now just being this continuous going all across, how's that going to change marketing? So think about the final product at the end. What's marketing now going to have to do differently? For HR, now the production process has changed, how's that going to do things differently? And lastly, for finance, now that they've gone from doing batches, stop, 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 at the end, now it's this continuous flow, how are they going to change things? On here to go through just like a quick answer for you. What am I defining? I'm defining like these production systems. So the movement from batch into flow is the idea that we're going to be moving out the stop in each production method to a transition from doing it in stages to making it to one continuous stage. The examples can be seen in the PMG as they wanted to use new production methods, moving from batch to flow. It sounds stupid, but just say in here, you can see it directly coming from the case with these new patterns of production. Some key bits about marketing, and you go, this is a big meaty question. Because it's 6 marks, you're just going to have to sort of go through each of the 3 bits and be a little bit different from the data style. So marketing is going to have to change. So you're going to have to start focusing on the fact that the product's now standardized and talking about the unique features of it. This is good because it helps the customer build brand loyalty. However, it's going to be a problem for marketing because you're going to have customers moving away from what they traditionally saw as the strong brand and what they liked in the past, what they like in the future. The HR part, now because you've changed from having these stages in between to being continuous flow, you're going to have to do different training for the workers, and you're also going to have to motivate them in different ways, particularly in decreasing the costs as it goes along, but also finding the areas they can control and rewarding them as a result. This will increase the production quality, but however paying workers more is going to actually cause more of a cost. Lastly, the finance part to go through. With finance, the finance is going to change from sort of being going through the different stages to having a really strong focus on budgets. and budgets and decreasing that amplitude up and down. What does this do? It increases quality, which is great, but however, the transition from doing this might also decrease morale, particularly for the managers, but in the long term might make it better. Overall, the recommendation would be is that they should do this. It will increase the output and potentially bring about better economies of scale, but in the short term there will be costs and challenges, but in the long term it will increase the overall brand and bring about greater profits. Alright, we'll just jump on to the next bit now. For you, have a go at the worksheet as you've seen in the description below. If you've done that already, try to get through as many of the HL questions as you can in the textbooks. Read over 5.1 in your book or in the description below. Have a look, read through the PDF. From here, do you reckon you could now talk about the fact that marketing, HR and finance changes as a result of production methods changing? This one's a bit trickier, but thinking back to 5.1a, do you reckon you can now work out this is when you should do job, this is when you do batch, this is when you do mass, this is when you do flow? When you do sell, sell's a bit trickier, but sell really has to be done for an appropriate situation. It's a bit tougher, you just got to know when it sort of applies. And lastly, do you sort of see why they have to have different production methods for different businesses? If you're going to have quality as being your big thing, sometimes getting price and being cheap is just completely different. If you want to have cheap, then quality jumps down as well. So if you want to go to a different production method that makes things cheap, sometimes it's hard to get quality to go as well. So there are two different ways of doing it. Alright, that's out of it for me today, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you again in 5.2, Costs and Revenue.